All right, guys. Good evening. I wanted to take a step away for a minute from the road to 100,000, because as you know from some of my recent videos, I've been trying to tighten things up a little bit, um, and take a step away from that very aggressive progression that I had inside. Um, you've also seen, most likely, if you haven't, go check it out. The video that I had recently with Zach on the anchor hedge. So I wanted to kind of talk about, take a step back, like I said, and talk about some general strategies without any dice rolls or anything, just kind of different ways, because, there's about 8 to 10 different DGE variations on the core, different ways to implement the core mindset and strategy, right? Um, so that's kind of, I want to look at coupling or pairing several different strategies together in a way so that you can pivot from one to the other. So we're going to discuss a couple different pivots here. I've already got a couple of color-coded chips out here, which we'll explain as we get into it. But for any of you who have been with me in the casino, you know that gin and tonic is the way to play. So, all right, so here we go. One of the most basic is, I like to play the inside numbers. So if you look at these red chips here, the inside numbers, and then if you have seen any of my, excuse me, if you've seen any of my recent videos, you see that I've kind of taken a step away from the aggressive progression where you always make up your losses in the next roll and moved more towards a conservative Charlie-esque 7 press. I don't say 7-7 press, I say 7 press, because human nature being what it is, we tend to get impatient if we're waiting too long. Strictly speaking, once the first 7 is thrown, while we're waiting for that second 7, the math is almost the same. Yeah, before either 7 is thrown, it's 1 over 36. Absolutely. Once that first 7 is thrown, dice have no memory. The next throw, you have a 1 in 6 chance of it hitting a 7. So there's different different philosophies on that, but I think the most strictest interpretation of the math is that, although in practice it's perhaps a little less likely than that, but regardless, it's close to that. So the inside numbers start with table minimum. These are all single chips, disregard. It's just for the color. So what I like to do is I like to have a balance, and for these numbers up here, so the hop sevens progression for me has been working very, very well. And the theory behind this is almost like it's just insurance for what's going on up here. So I will share in the description. Um, I'll share a link to my spreadsheet where I lay out all the math behind this bet and show that it's best to only play after the first 7 is thrown, and then win or lose. Lose, obviously you don't have a choice, it's gone. But if you win, just to lock up your winnings, just lock up the winnings and move on. Maybe if you're 20 rolls deep, 20 sets in the progression deep, and you're towards the end of your bankroll capacity, you will have made so much money that pressing or keeping it up for one more, looking for a third 7, might be advantageous. But in general, I found when you look at the math, again, as Charlie always says, we're looking to make a living, not a killing, right? So the payouts on this hop sevens bet is fantastic, as you'll see on the sheet. Um, and it more than helps offset and act as insurance for our inside bets here. The inside bets here, I've talked about it in another video. After 1-7, if you get a hit, you press by 1 unit and turn them all off. You're only on for 1 roll after the 7, just like this is 1 roll after the 7, and that's why it works so well. Doesn't matter how many units up you've pressed on each of these, you always consider it, let's say it's a $10 table, 44. You've only lost 44. So let's say you've gone 15 rolls deep, 15 single 7s, so you're up to the level 15 here, and you've got a whole bunch of these numbers pressed, and maybe you have $200-300 out there. Doesn't matter. Still just 44. You've only lost 44. So depending on how all that plays out, you might just want to come back up with 44. So that's the inside numbers and the hop sevens as insurance. So it's not quite a pivot. I think this down here is one of the purest pivots, and so we'll get into that right now. Okay, so we know the pass line Mayhem. We'll leave the purple off to the side. So we're just looking at the two black chips right now, right? So we know that the pass line Mayhem, the way that we play that, we do table min. So let's say $10, right? If we win that bet, we press by 5 and lock up 5. If we lose that bet, we come back up with 15. Loss plus 5. If we lose that bet, we come back up with 30, right? Loss plus 5. Ease of calculation. The first loss, you just add 5. The second loss, it doubles. Loss plus 5 is just double. So 30 would be 60, then 120, then 240, right? Okay. So now the problem with this bet is, let's say you get up to, in the original video, in the original strategy, which Charlie himself would say, it's not DGE approved yet. It's still in testing phase, if you will. But the way that he outlines it in the video is that you keep going, loss plus 5, loss plus 5. If you win, let's say we win at the $75 level after losing a couple times, then you would press by a nickel. Let's say we win at the $80 level and multiple wins in a row. So if you think about it, if we win at this level, let's say we're coming off a loss or two. Let's say we're at the $80 level. We just came off a loss to get to the $80 level. Here we are, and we win. Our first win. When we win that first time, because remember, loss plus 5 is what our bet was, so we just made a nickel on that. But now we've won, so we're going to press. Now it's 85, and if we win again, it's $85 straight profit. So 2 wins in a row at any level is straight. The second one is always straight profit. So now if you take a step back from this for a moment, look at the lay 10 progression, and remember, after 4 10s, let's say 4th Street, after 4 10s are thrown, we lay 50 to win 25. Let's say we lose that 50. Now we lay 150 as the more conservative, or 300 as a more aggressive. So we lay 300 in order to cover the 50 and make 100. I know most people do the 150. So now you're covering the 50. 150 makes 75. You're covering the 50 and making 25. Then you go up to $500. You're covering the 150 that came before and the 50 that came before, so that's 200. But off the 500, you only make 250. So you're only trying to make $50, right? That's on 7th Street on the 10. So all that just to say, it's not about making big bucks on a single roll. It's about chipping away and making little ticky-tack wins, right? As Charlie always says, these casinos were built off of $1 and $5 wins, off of slots, etc., right? So consistent micro wins is how we roll, right? So, okay, with that same mentality, the original DGE strategy for the pass line Mayhem was to continue to press by 5 on a win, loss plus 5 on a loss, until once you're over $100, any win over $100, you reset back to the base bet, $10. Let's say it's a $10 table. Reset to table minimum. Now the problem with this is, let's say you're up at 75, $80. You just came off a win on 75. Hallelujah. Press it by 5. Loss. $80 lost. $85 is next, right? $85 is next. Loss. That's only the second pass line lost in a row, and we've got to come up with from 85 to 170. $170 already. What's after that? $340. What's after that? $680. What's after that? $1360. That's only 5 losses. That's incredibly intense for a very reasonable. That's a huge amount of. That's definitely a possibility, right? I've playing the pass line mayhem. I've been up to $1,200 2 or 3 times. Talk about pucker effect, right? That could easily, on the pass line, someone could easily throw 2 or 3 come out 2s or 3s, right? So 2 3s or 12s for that matter, right? So how do we mitigate that? How do we make this a little bit more conservative, a little bit more breathable, a little less pucker effect? How do we insulate ourselves from that, right? Well, a good rule of thumb perhaps would be, and this is what I really appreciate this this take when I was talking to Zach about this and other strategies, right? So on the pass line, start with table min. Win or loss, it's always press 5 afterwards, right? Let's say it's a win. We get a second win, 15. So now keep in mind, on the first win, we already won $10. Second win, it's at 15 now. We win again. Now our total win was $25. So let's not push it. Let's just go back to table minimum. After 2 consecutive wins, the second one we know is straight profit. Let's reset to 0, to base. Why push it more? We're willing to go 6 or 7 streets deep just to make $50. Why would I not be willing to conservatively reset after making 25 in a situation that happens far more often than 7th Street on the 10s, right? So, in fact, 4th Street on the 10s happens so rarely, you may go a whole session only playing it once. 2-hour session only playing this bet once. I guarantee you this getting to the second level was going to happen more than once every session. And if you're only looking for that second win, you just made $25. Even if there's no losses, 2 wins in a row, reset. You just made $25, the same amount of money here. So it's extremely lucrative. But you may though. Now look at this though. So let's say this is a loss. $10 lost, up to 15 lost. We've lost 25 total. Now we come up with 30. 30. That's the second loss in a row. 60 would be the third loss. 120. 240. 5 losses in a row. Now statistically we're only at 120 because we started low. So the idea is we want to avoid getting super high. If we're ever over $50, I would say the most conservative way, if you're ever over 50 instead of ever over the 100, if you're ever over 50 and there's a single win, reset back to table minimum. You just made $5. Back away from the danger zone, because over 50 it starts to get out of control, right? So back down to the table min and just look at getting that $5. $5. A single win over $50, you reset to table min. 2 wins sequentially when it's under $50. So let's say you're at 30 and you're coming off a loss. You're at 30. You win, press by 5. You win again. So you just won $5 on this bet. Now you come up with 35 and you win again. You just made $40 in 2 rolls. Reset to $10. It's far more conservative. the amount of times you'll get to $1,000 or more on the pass line, it'll still happen occasionally, but you're not going to fear bankruptcy as often because it's much more conservative, right? So that's what I would suggest. Table minimum, 2 consecutive wins, reset to table minimum, unless you're over $50 as your bet, in which case, with a single win, you go back to table minimum, right? So, pretty simple. But that's the pass line mayhem as I'm playing it right now. Now, the beautiful thing about this pivot here, so you got a couple wins, right? Pass line wins. Unique point. Unique point. Unique point. 3 unique points. Now, we know that this gambit here on the don't pass, which you guys know my table is funky with the don't pass only over here. So I just play the field as my don't pass, right? So the don't pass right here. With 3 don't passes, if you're playing the pass line mayhem, once you get to 3, in fact, you could even say once you get to 2, you at least start balancing your pass line bet with a don't pass, right? Once that 3rd comes, go ahead and take the pass line away because you've just made a point, obviously. You just made a point, so it's on the come out. So now you're just playing whatever it was, 30, 15, 20. I think the payout for making a 4th unique point, where's that here? For making the 4th unique point is 25 to 1. The 5th unique point is 250 to 1. And the 6th unique point is 1,000 to 1. So you start to get really in a good position with these here, right? So after the 3rd, so this is a nice pivot. So before, while these other bets are being established, so to speak, and let's put them in order here. First unique point, still playing the pass line. Second unique point, still playing the pass line minimum, or mayhem. 3rd unique point, pivot, right? Now we're playing the don't pass. 4th unique point, now we can start to get aggressive. Because we know once this has been made, the next bet is 250 to 1 likely that it'll win. And the next one is 1,000 to 1. So, all right. But now this is a good transition. Okay, so the first 2 or 3 wins here on the pass line, then we pivot to the don't pass. Now you'll notice earlier I had this purple chip up here. There's also a purple chip up here and up here. We'll get to that in a moment. But I think what's interesting is, I think you'll find very interesting. I'm going to remove the red because the red is just the inside bets and the hop 7s. Those are kind of a self-contained balance and counterbalance insurance, if you will. So we've got our white chips up here. What does this mean? Now, if you remember, let me get to the. Let me put the green ones aside for a moment, and we'll just talk about the purple and the whites. So if you remember from the video last week, I think it was with Zach, we were talking about the anchor hedge. So now everybody knows the lay 4 and the lay 10, and the 4 hedge and the 10 hedge. We talked about that. We talked about the blending of the 2 in the anchor hedge. So when you're playing your inside numbers, let's say for 66 inside, right? I'm playing on a $15 table, let's say. Well, we were doing a $10 table before, so let's just play a $10 table too, just to keep the mindsets the same. So a $10 table is 44 inside. If we put $100 up after 4th street, so we're being conservative. We could be more aggressive if we're up, but let's stay conservative. So 4th 10 is thrown, or the 4th 4 is thrown, and we drop the first in the the lay 10 or the lay 4 strategy, right? $100 bet. That $100, it's usually a $50 in the lay 10 strategy. But if we put $100 instead, that $100 is going to make 50, which if it's a $10 table is 44. It's a $6 gain, right? So we put $100. That's the first one. Now that balances, and that's the anchor hedge. Now the reason I've also put one down here is there's another anchor, and this is what Zach and I were talking about after we turned off the recording last week. If you have two, let's say you're playing the Dewey Don't over here, especially once you get 2 unique points, you come up with the Dewey Don't. 2 unique points, come up with the Dewey Don't to balance, because on the 6th point, that's your pivot, or the 3rd unique point, that's your pivot point. So you Dewey Don't, right? And then 3rd unique point is established. You come up with whatever you need to have here as this bet as the anchor hedge in order to keep these on. So let's say 44 inside, right, is $45. $45 in order to cover that, round it up to 50. If the point is 6 or 8, you need $60 here, which will pay out $50, which will cover your bets plus $6. 44 plus 6, $50, right? So, and then the math is a little different on the outside numbers, but it's okay. So you get the idea, right? So you hedge here, depending on whatever the point is, and leave all the other numbers up running inside. And you just look for those numbers, just like the anchor hedge. Check out that video if you'd like, just to refresh. But it's the same mentality. But I really liked when Zach and I were talking, he suggested using the anti-fire bet progression as the excuse or the justification of hedging, because at that point you know where you stand. So then the next time, you're looking to make $50 here, but we know it's 25 to 1 to win. The next one is 250 likely to win. So you could just come up with $100, cover the 25 or cover the 60 you lost, and make 60 beyond. So there's a lot of options, because again, once that 3rd or 4th unique point is made, the probability starts to slant extremely or significantly, I should say, in your favor, right? So the same mentality behind the anchor hedge on the 4 and the 10, replacing the lay progression, using it as an excuse to leverage and open up your 44 inside, is a fantastic strategy. Okay, so now we've got basically 3 entry points for the anchor hedge. So we'll take those down. So leading into the anchor hedge on the 10 or the anchor hedge on the 4 is the Fibonacci 4 and 10. So I would recommend, both for the Fib 4 and the Fib 10 and for the hop 7s, you wait for 3 7s before you start playing, just to be a little more conservative. Here you wait for 3 7s and then you start betting, 3 single 7s, and then you start betting. Here you wait for 3 7s and no 4, or 3 7s without a 10. So you may have a dozen 4s before you get your in between those 3 7s. But if you've had no 10s between those 3 7s, then you start betting the Fibonacci 10. And if you want to look at the progression and understand that, there's a video earlier on my channel. But so, and this is what I think is a really cool pivot, because it helps you know when to take down these Fibonacci bets. So let's say, we've got the 4 and the 10 running. Couple 7s are hit. We keep coming back. We keep coming back. We keep coming back. Now we've got 4 4s hit, 3 or 4 4s hit in a row. We pivot from the 4 to the no for. Now we've pivoted into our anchor hedge with $100 up there. We turn our bets on and we're ready to rock. Until the same happens over here, we continue to bet the fib 10. So that's the kind of pivot, as you can see, combining different strategies that are based on the DGE mentality and math. You start with a fib 4, pivot to a hedge, to an anchor hedge. You start down here with a pass line, Mayhem. You pivot on the anti-fire bet, right? So I think those are the two big pivots. And then in general, these are open when you've got your anchor down. Or these are open and working on the inside after you've hit a 7. So I think this, you got your insurance triangle in the middle, if you will, right? So you've got your insurance triangle, you've got your pass, don't pass pivot, which coordinates with the fire bet martingale. That fire bet martingale also coordinates with the anchor hedge. That anchor hedge activates your inside numbers. And an optional, more aggressive add-on would be the Fibonacci 4 and 10 as preparation or pivots before you get to the anchor hedge opportunities on the 4 and the 10. So I think that's how I will be moving forward on my road to 100,000. I think that's a nice synthesis and a balancing of the various strategies that we have available to us. And I'm excited. I think this is because of the restrictions on the inside numbers and not chasing those losses, but pressing after every single 7, pressing, running the hop 7s to balance, considering every loss on the first level, no matter how many times I passed, or pressed, I should say, as just $44 loss. That's totally easy to make up. So I think it's a good balance and a good matrix, if you will, of the different strategies, kind of coordinating them together. But there it is. I think that's pretty straightforward. Again, the pass to don't pass pivot based on the reverse martingale, which segues us into the reverse martingale anchor hedge, which corresponds somewhat, or it's analogously related to the 4 and the 10 lay anchor hedge. And then all those anchor hedges, those 3 anchors, activate our inside numbers. Outside of those more rare circumstances, our inside numbers are activated after a single 7. So is our fire bet our hop 7s as an insurance. So we have our insurance triangle right here. And then as an added, a little bit more risky variation with the hop 7, with the Fibonacci 4 and 10, looking for 1 win on each progression to reset. And that is a way to get a little extra profit while you're waiting for those scenarios to prop out. So perhaps we could even make this the pass line Mayhem a green chip to show the correlation between these 3 bets, all of which are a little more risky. I've had a pass line bet of $1,200 before or more. It's a little hair raising, but again, it's a similar risk. A little bit. These 3 green chips are a little more risky. This don't pass triggers after 2 or 3 of the fire bet numbers here. So again, I think that's a good high-level overview of the matrix of strategies and how they all balance each other out and how we pivot from one to the next. So I think that's it. I look forward to hearing your comments or suggestions, and good luck, gentlemen.